Hey y'all, Bob with Million Mile Garage. We're doing a alternator replacement on the 2002 Nissan Maxima, my personal daily driver today. And I did score a new one from O'Reilly, and they had a deal. I think it was 20% off if you shipped it to your house. So I got like 50 bucks off a brand new alternator. Pretty stoked about that. I think it said on the website it was made by Hitachi. The brand though is Ultima Select, and it is a Chinese-made brand like everything else. But Hitachi was a very good name for Japanese-built automobiles. In fact, the alternator that's on the Maxima now was probably OEM, probably a Hitachi unit. So all new windings, new casting, everything on this is brand new. There isn't anything on this that's used, which is awesome. The alternator that was in the car had smoke coming out of it, so I'm going to say it's not a candidate for a rebuild. Just showing down in here, if I can get it to focus a little bit, you can see that the windings are kind of a dull copper color. You just kind of go in on that right there. And definitely something shorted out, because it kind of burned the grease off of them. And it did have smoke coming out of it, so I know that alternator is a dead player, unfortunately. My method of attack is going to be to remove the radiator, and I'm going to basically pull the alternator out from the top. I know there's some videos that show disconnecting the AC compressor from the bottom. Maybe not a bad way to go. I don't want to disturb any of the AC lines. The AC on this car works perfectly, so I'm not going to leave anything to chance there. It's just my personal preference. Everybody has their own way of doing it. Hey, just showing you all real quick. I'm going to take this panel off right here, and then I'm going to take both panels off underneath the car, just so I have access to everything to get rid of, undo any hoses or whatever I have to do to get the radiator out. And just in case you're wondering how I supported the vehicle, I set the jack stand right where the jacking tab is, in between the notches, and it does not bend. So that piece of metal they have sandwiched in there is incredibly strong. Okay, with all the plastic cladding removed, I've got access to the radiator. I'm going to open up the drain. And because of the orientation of this nut, I can't use a nice big socket and breaker bar, so I'm just going to use an old-fashioned torque extender here, and I'm just going to break this nut loose. You'll notice I'm using a washer and a lock nut, which is rolled out of the way right here. I actually had this pulley fall off going into work one day, so it's very critical to make sure that you've got a healthy nut and you have it torqued down really well. And I also have I guess a plan B. I'll show you topside. It just so happens that the struts use the same style of nut as that retainer for that pulley, so I keep an extra one on top here, just in case you never know. Okay, with a universal extension on a 14 millimeter, I'm just going to come in here and grab the adjuster and back off on that. And so now with the belt loose enough, I can come under here, and if there's enough slack here, I can push up on that. I should be able to get that belt out, and that's going to come out with the pulley, the idler. The big washer goes on the outside, and there should be a little washer on the back side, along with a spacer that's going to come out. You'll need that. That's going to go on the back side, and we'll just get this belt out of the way. You see the belt just loops around the crankshaft pulley, and then it goes around the AC compressor, goes around the alternator. Of course, the smooth part, the only smooth part on the belt, is going to go against the idler. It's real easy to figure out how to put it back on. Super easy. Not so great doing it from below the car, but one of the easier belts to change out. So there's the belt. I have it out. I always make a notation of direction. So I have the lettering would be upright if you're looking at it from the driver's side of the car. So I'm going to remember to install it that same way. Just my thing. It may not matter which direction you spin it, but I always like to spin it in the same direction I started spinning it in. Anyway, so we got that out of the way, and with the pulley out of the way, you can see that's how the adjuster works. It just moves up and down with that adjuster up there. That's how you take the tension in and out. So I've got a fastener here on the alternator now that I have access to, and then there's another one right in here. It's going to be kind of hard to see. Well, actually, I have to go topside and show you that. Hold on. Yeah, and the other one's right up top right here. I'm going to just span in on it right there. That's the back side of it. You're going to have to go in blind and come in over this way where I'm pointing with my finger, and have to come in with a socket. Probably a 12 millimeter. I'll tell you all which one I use. No big deal. All right, I'm just going to take the air intake off. It's got two fasteners right here. I think I only have to undo these two, and then I can just lift it out. Just go around, and there's a couple of points here where the wiring harness is attached to the fan assembly, and you can see the factory ones broke off a long time ago, and zip ties work really good and they're plentiful. So I'm just going to take these and cut them loose. There, and I got one here. Yeah, we'll get the other one off. You got the point. And then I got to undo the connector here and here. And if I remember, because of the age of the vehicle, I think these tabs are pre-broken, so I just got to go in and manipulate and get those to disconnect. I can see where it still pushes in right there. I think that's probably the release. I think if I grab it with my fingers, it should come out. Being careful not to try to grab it by the wires. I'll probably have to use a screwdriver on that. I'll get those two loose. Get this wiring harness undone so I can flop it out of the way. And then I've got, what else have I got to do here? I'm going to get this drain tube loose here and here, and I'll probably disconnect it right here. It's got a very simple, actually I can probably just do it with my fingers. Pull that off, get that out of the way, and then I'll just have to dig further down. I'm probably going to take the radiator hose loose here if I can get to the clamp, which I can see it right there. That should be pretty easy to get to, and then I'll probably take it loose. It's probably easier to get it loose on the plastic part. Although I could take it loose there if I don't want to risk damaging the radiator. Probably better off to take it off here so I'm not monkeying with that water outlet, because this is a 20-year-old radiator. It's just about drained. Radiator still looks pretty decent inside, not bad. Original radiator. And then I think I've got two cooling lines, an inlet and an outlet for the transmission. I'll go down below and disconnect those. And I got two brackets here that I'll undo. And then the radiator should just lift right out. And then I've got access, pretty good access to the alternator, and we'll have this out in a few minutes. And I'll just grab a pick and work that off. Oh, it comes off pretty easy. Okay, now I got the hose out of the way. This is an original hose. I don't want to monkey with it too much. I guess I'm being kind of penny foolish here, though. I probably should replace that hose. But anyway, with the hose out of the way, I can move the harness out of the way and wrap that over. And just showing y'all real quick. That's what the connector looks like. It's got a tab right there that you have to push on, and that's how you get the release. And don't pull it out by the wires. Try to grab it by these ridges right here with your thumbs, and then push in on that, and that'll get those released. Annoying little bastards. Hey, at this point, before going any further, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the negative terminal off the battery. If I don't remember to do that now, when I go to disconnect the lug off of the alternator, it's going to be a spark show. We'll go ahead and just set that out of the way. We're good there. All right, let's see if I can just pull this out one-handed. Okay, I guess I could. We're just going to take the radiator, and I think I can just carefully set it down on the floor. I don't think a whole lot's going to run out of it. It's pretty empty. I'll just set that there. Just showing you all what I did down here. I clamped the AC cooling lines just so they won't keep weeping out. That's some Jerry engineering right there, isn't it? And then I just used a regular needle nose vice grip here, just so that the fluid will stop running out all over the floor. You can see I still got a little water running out of that lower hose. I took the gamble. I'm going to leave all of this hose stuff connected up here, hoping that I don't have to remove it to get the alternator out. I think I can sneak the alternator out. Looks like what I got to do down here is I have to disconnect that AC compressor connector, because it's attached to the pigtail First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this cover off, and there's the output lug for the alternator. I'm going to get that off first, and looks like I got some stuff in here. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this connector here. It's got a pigtail that runs all the way down to the alternator. We're going to have to reuse that pigtail, but I don't think I can get down in there easy enough to release that. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it attached to the alternator when I remove it. And of course I've got, you know, that one bolt hidden behind here that also holds this bracket on. I went ahead and released this loom connector here. They come off real easy. There's a little tab you push in. It just snaps in and out. You can see how when it goes back on, they go back on real easy. You can hear it click in. I missed it. I'm just showing you real quick how they go on and off. Click, and then you just got to come in with a screwdriver there, push in on it, push that in, and then lift out. I'm going to do the same thing here after I get this lug off. Okay, I'm just going to come in with a 12mm and undo that lug. I just left my wobble extension on, no big deal. I'll get this right off. See if I can drop it in the oil bucket. That'll be nice. Oh, that worked out nicely. Okay, and then I should be able to just slide that off. Yeah, that came right off. Okay, so I got that loose. Then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get this stuff loose here, no big deal. And then I can get back in here, probably with a 14mm socket, and get that loose, and then I'll do the one on the bottom as well. There we go. And now I should be able to pull this connector out. Should be able to pull it loose from the bracket. There we go. Then we got that out. See, that's what those look like. 3/16 socket releases them. You don't have to monkey around with needle nose pliers or end up breaking it. And then there's another one of these wonderful connectors I'm going to have to fool with to get that loose, get that pigtail off the alternator. I'm in here with a 12mm and a short extension with a 3/8 drive, and I'm going to break this top bolt loose, being careful not to pinch that pigtail that's coming out of the alternator. See, I got everything loose here. Okay, I ran into one other snag. The adjuster is in the way of this 14mm fastener. No matter the tool set that I have, my deep socket is too long. I can't get the ratchet in between the frame and the socket to get that loose. And of course, my shallow socket is too shallow. It bottoms out on the stud, and I can't get it onto the nut. And my swivel head ratchet wrench looks like it'll work just fine, but it won't clear in here. So I'm going to have to take this fastener, and then there's one hiding way up in there, right there. I'll get those three out, remove that, and then I got access to get that fastener off, and then I think I'm pretty close to getting this out. Wow. Okay, it did break it loose. Okay, I got it loose. Now, I'm going to have to push it through, and then I'm probably going to have to fish it out with a magnet from the other side to fully retrieve it so that I can actually lift the alternator out. And of course, I just got the one fastener left on top to loosen, and I should be able to just lift this thing out. Hey, just showing you all what I'm up against. I can span in right there. I don't know how, it's probably not super focused, but you can see it's basically a bolt with a hook on the end of it, and I've got to come up with my magnet and just try to fish it out best I can, and that'll allow me to get the alternator out. It'll be a real joy getting it back in there, I can tell you that. There we go. And I actually lost the, there it is right there, you can see it, I'm getting coolant all over me. You can see the fastener's just hanging right there. In fact, I can knock it out right there. And there it is. It's got a little hook thing on it. And then I'm going to have a real joy getting it back in. I'm probably going to need a real long pair of needle nose pliers to get that back up in there. Okay, back up top with a 12mm. It was a 14 to get loose on the bottom. And I'm just going to come in here and work this loose. You know, again, it's really hard to see in there. It's just the back side of the alternator right there. You can see I'm going to crack that loose. Just keep turning on it, and when I get that out, I should be able to just pull the alternator right out. I went in here and took the one fastener out that secures the bracket down to the engine block down in there. I don't know if you can still see the mounting hole where I got it out or not. Oh, where is it? It's way down in there. You see that right there, that little spot? Yep. I took that out and then just rolled this whole harness out of the way. So I should be able to just reach down in there and lift the alternator out. It's probably going to be kind of hard to do one-handed, but it's loose. You can see it's just floating around. It's going to come out, and I'll have that out in 2 shakes. Okay, as you can see, it came out. I got it on the bench. The only thing I did have to do is I did have to push this hose out of the way a little bit. I think it was way easier to leave all that stuff in place and try to take it out with the radiator, so that's what I did. Boy, that's awful dirty down there, isn't it? So the only thing I have to do is transfer this harness, which you see it also has the pigtail for the AC compressor, so I'm going to be real careful not to disturb that. You can hear by this little clicky noise. That's how you release it. Of course, it's a two-handed job. You know, you got to release it with one and then try to grab it with the other hand. Never a joy. You kind of see how they go together here. You can see that's the tab that it clicks into right there and receives it. Just looking at the mounting ears, they look to be identical. The output lug's in the same spot as the new one, and the mounting ears are in the same place. Yep, back there, that looks good. And just showing y'all how that this is going to be a little bit of a chore to get this back in. As you can see, it's got the hook on it here, and it's just going to go in through here, and then when you tighten it up, you know, the hook grabs it and doesn't allow the bolt to rotate while you tighten the nut. That's all that does. That's probably going to be the most difficult part of the job, is getting that back in. So yeah, I'm just going to transfer the wiring harness from the burned out old one, put that on the new one. I'm just looking at all the grease and junk. I know I had a leaky rocker cover for a long time, but look at that. Wow. That probably didn't contribute to that alternator's longevity, did it? Having some of the cooling ports blocked up like that. That's pretty nasty. Yep. But I can see here, it looks like to me some of these got overheated. That's unfortunate. But yeah, maybe I'll dissect this and we'll see what caused that one to fail. I did leave the pigtail off. I decided it'll be easier to reattach it here after I roll it into the car, and here's what I got to do here to get it in. I'm just going to come in here like this, and I'm going to lower it down in here just like this, being careful not to gouge the radiator and also not nick the wire coming off the O2 sensor. And then I'm going to roll it over. I'm going to come in this way. You notice I'm coming around the radiator hose here, and I can kind of just sneak it in that way. And I'm just barely touching the O2 sensor as I go in. And I got that in. And now I just have to come in here and line those ears up with the pass-through up here, like that. They're going to go around just like that. And that lines up beautifully. Now what I'm going to have to do is take the bracket here, pointing over here, that I removed earlier. And I'm going to reattach the bracket down there. And I think it'd probably be easier for me to hang the alternator from the bracket up here first, and then roll it over and get that long pin to line up with it. Hey, just showing y'all what I'm doing here. I got that big bracket back down here. Now the alternator's in place. Not sure if I had to take it out or not. It certainly looked like a good idea. And again, I'm just going to put the 12mm screw back in. You see it's got a tang on it right there. It's going to keep the bracket from rotating around on me. Once I have that secured, I'll put the bolt in right there on that lower hole, and that'll have the alternator hanging, and then I'll be able to get that lower bolt in. Hey, just showing y'all kind of a close-up here. You can see the stud sticking out on the other side here, that nut that I put in, you know, on that bracket here now. And I've got it just tight enough so I can grab the alternator and move it in any position, and it'll stay. I just loosened it by doing that, unfortunately. But I'm gonna have to tighten that nut up just a little more so that when I push up on this, it's gonna line it up with the holes on the bottom, and it's gonna make it easier for me to get that long bolt with the hook on it back in from the back side. Okay, it was a fight to get that bolt up in there, but of course, having that upper alternator bolt tightened so that I can just kind of cheat that alternator into position. I actually went in from the fender well to watch the alternator hole line up with the hole going through the engine block. And so what I've got is I've got a pry bar that I'm going to come up through very carefully up in here, and I'm just going to knock that into place. It'll take me a little bit to get it scooted over, but basically what I ended up having to do was I used my fingers to go in. Let me just pan out a little bit if it will allow me. I came in through here in between the catalytic converter or the exhaust pipe and the engine block. I came in through there and actually was able to squeeze my hands in there tight enough to get that bolt to get stuck in the hole. And then I took a long wrench like this and stuck it up there like that and grabbed the bolt and supported it with the open end of a wrench, and then used a magnet to go in and kind of force it over. It took me about 15 minutes to get that in there. It was a bit of a chore. It was not fun, but I did get it to go. So all I had to do is just get it pushed through a little bit farther, and then I can start the nut on the other side from the fender well. And I pretty much got this licked. Okay, I got the pigtail plugged in. I got it tucked behind the main lug. So that lug's going to go on top like this, like that. The pigtail is going to hide behind it. I'll connect these two here, and then I got to reconnect the AC compressor harness down there. And then pretty much from there, I think I'm just putting the radiator back in. I think we'll be good to go. Okay, I'm just going to go in and reattach my loom holders. There we go. And that will go on here. Like so. I get it to loop over. There we go. Click. That clicks in. Okay, all that stuff is back together just like it's supposed to be. That looks nice. Sure. Okay. Right on. Cool. Good deal. You can see the stud pushed through nicely, so I'm going to go in and very carefully put that on there without pushing the stud back through, because it's going to try to fall. As I do that, I just want to get that nut started, and then I can pull that out as I go. First I got to get it to go on. There we go. Hopefully I didn't cross thread it. Looks good to me. Yep, and I'm just going to have to snug that down and then kind of put everything back in the reverse order. I'm not going to show all of this crap going back together. That's pretty self-explanatory. Hey, and son of a gun, the ratcheting wrench fits on the new alternator quite nicely. So we'll go with that. I'll take that. Sure. Cool. Hey, all you Maxima buffs out there that may have been watching this, you probably noticed that I only have an outer dust cover for this, the large washer. I think I mentioned earlier when I was going to work one morning, the nut loosened up on the pulley and fell off the car and chewed up the belt. I was able to drive the car home because it wasn't far from home. I still had power steering, but I didn't have alternator or air conditioner. And because it has an internal water pump, the water pump was still turning. So I basically made it home before I killed the battery. And I actually, it was about 4 miles from my house up towards County Line Road where it happened. And I actually went back and retraced my steps with another vehicle and found the pulley, found the spacer. Actually, I think the spacer was still hanging on the stud up here. This is where it goes, just like that. And I think I found this before I left the neighborhood. It was on my neighborhood street. I did go procure another washer, and I had to procure another nut. I never found the nut. And I think, as I showed you earlier, I keep a spare nut on top of one of the strut studs under the hood, just in case I lose the nut again. I guess these are notorious for doing that, and I'd use like a locking nut with teeth on it. Not sure it makes a lot of difference, but that's what I use. Anyway, so I'm just going to stuff the pulley back up in there. Goes in there like so. Put that over the spacer like that. There we go. Got to pull that stud out a little bit too. Get that on. Now I'm just going to put on my washer. or dust washer, whatever you want to call that, dust cup. And then I got this, and then of course the nut. There we go. I can tighten all that stuff up. I'm only going to snug it up though, because I still have to be able to move the pulley up and down. Get the serpentine belt on, make the adjustment from up top, and then tighten the nut there, and that's what holds the adjustment, is tightening this right here. And if you just tighten this up finger tight enough so that you can just move the adjuster up and down like that, it'll hold position. That'll make it a lot easier to get the belt on. I think moving it up high is going to allow the belt to go on. That'll be the loosest setting right there. That sounds good. It's easiest if you slip the belts on over all of the ribbed pulleys first, and then slide the belt underneath the tensioner last. That way you're not trying to grab the belt over these tight lips. So if you got your belt looking like that, you've got all the rib parts facing the ribs. It goes around the top of the alternator. It goes around the compressor. It goes up, over, and around the crankshaft pulley, and then it tucks in on the tensioner. And of course the flat part without the ribs, that's the only place that touches the tensioner. And that's it. You just slide that on. And then, of course, from up top, the tensioner is going to push down on the belt like this and take the slack out. And then when you have it tightened sufficiently, come back and tighten this nut here last, and then that part is done. All right, just coming in with a universal joint on there with my wrench, and I'm just going to come in and take the slack out of that belt. Once I feel like I got sufficient tension, I'll go down there and check it. Probably take a couple of tries. And once I feel like I got sufficient tension, I'll tighten up that pulley down there and call it good. And as soon as I start feeling it having some drag, like that, I'm going to go down there and take a look. Let's go down here below the water line. Just going to take my thumb. Ugh. Been a long morning. Okay, and it looks like maybe I get a 1/2 inch of deflection. That feels good. Just pick the longest span. That feels good and tight. I don't think that's going to have any problems. So that looks good. So interesting thing about the Maxima, it does not have an automatic belt tensioner. Same thing for the power steering as well. It has an adjuster as well. That one feels pretty good. It's got like maybe a 1/2 inch play, maybe a little loose. I probably could go in and tighten on that one a little bit. But I think that one, the only thing I do is from up top is I just crank on it. But anyway, that looks good. We're going to let that go the way it is, and I'll get the radiator in, and I think this thing will be running again today. Okay, radiator dropped in place. Super easy, right? Now it's just a matter of just grabbing the wiring harness. We're going to roll that over, reattach everything. You know, these go down in here like this. I'm going to have to get some more zip ties to replace the ones I cut. To replace the broken factory connectors that, you know, broke 10 years ago or whenever last time I had this out. And pretty much that's it. Hook up some hoses and we'll get it started and see how she's doing. Helpful Million Mile Garage tip number 1021. When you're putting these factory spring clamps back on, you want to put them back in the exact position they were on before you removed it, and that way you risk less of having a leak. And you can see I probably could rotate that down just a little more and get it more perfectly in position. You can see where there's some little dents right there where I didn't quite line that up. You want to get that back almost exactly like you had it, otherwise you risk that hose leaking, especially when it's an old hose like that. A Million Mile Garage helpful hint 1027. If you do have an alternator that's catching on fire or making some really bad noises and you basically want to limp home, but you're worried about catching the car on fire, if you remove the fuse out of this slot right here, which I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read what number that is right there. You guys probably can. But just keeping in mind, these ones right here with the plastic tabs are spare fuses. So this would be the first live fuse. So the second one over, so it'd be the second number 10. If you take that out, it will disable the charging system and the alternator will not be putting out power and it won't have power going to it. which is a good thing in an emergency situation if you want to limp home without catching the car on fire. The only downside is your instrument cluster won't work, so you won't be able to see anything going on. You won't have speed, fuel. It won't tell you you're not charging, but you'll know that, right? And it won't tell you if you're overheating or anything else. But anyway, I'm going to take this 10 amp out of the spare spot and put it there, just like that, and I'll replace the fuse remover in its little holder thing. And I'm just going to grab the keys off the floor if I can find the key, and I'm just going to roll the key and see what happens. That's a good sign. Instrument cluster's working. That's good. Of course, I got to check engine soon because I had that fuse out, so the instrument cluster wasn't working, which also means that there was a couple of indicators that don't work when that's out. It's going to throw a check engine code for that as well. No big deal. Let's just come over here. I don't see any smoke coming out of this one, so that's a good sign. Tell you what, we'll grab the infrared and just see. And aim it right at the windings. And it doesn't look too bad. It's going to get warm when it's charging. That should be okay. All this stuff looks good. Yep, that's nice. Okay, sure. What kind of voltage we got here? Okay, we're putting out over 14 volts. That's good. I'd like to see 14.5-ish, but I know this battery is a little low. I'm not going to run it very long. I'm going to throw the battery charger on the battery, so I'm not working this new alternator too hard. But looks like everything's working. I'm real happy about that. That's a good thing. Yeah, so the battery's a little low. I don't want to wreck the new alternator, so we're going to charge on that for a little bit.